What's the matter? Don't you like books?
Oh, I like them fine. But a computer takes less space.
I've got my own system. Books, young man. Books, thousands of them. If time wasn't so important, I'd show you something. My library. Thousands of books.
Well, we finally got to the remaining issues of Star Trek Year 5, and it wraps up the final year of the historic 5-year mission of Kirk and Company. Hi, I'm Bruce Gibson here on Positively Trek, and with me, reading the comics, is Dan Gunther. Dan, how's reading going?
Oh, Bruce, really enjoyable. I've been loving the Year 5 series. This, like you said, has been a long time coming. We're covering the final omnibus collection of the final 5 issues. I was looking back, and our last episode about Year 5 was Positively Trek number 114, in which we covered issues 13 to 19 of Year 5. So it's been a while that we've waited to cover these last few issues.
Well, we were going to do these back in, I think, November. And then the omnibus was delayed, and so we decided to wait, and it was delayed till January, and now it's got delayed again for April 19th, 2022. But we decided to just go ahead and do this now, because the issues that appear in this have been out for a while now. They came out during 2021, and I've read them as they've come out. And so it was nice to go back and read issues 20 through 25. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I did things a little differently. I kind of saved them and didn't read them and read them all just very recently for this episode. So I got to say it was kind of tough to sit on those and not read them because I was really interested to see how it turned out. But I also kind of wanted something new and exciting to be able to read for this show. And yeah, I got to say, they didn't disappoint. I really enjoyed reading these over the last couple days.
Well, we're going to go right into them. So if you haven't read them, we are going to spoil things that are in these issues. And if you don't mind being spoiled, go ahead and listen. But I have to say that now reading them all at once, as opposed to waiting, it just goes so much better. Like I enjoyed them better the second time around than I did the first time around, because you're just continuing the story in the moment instead of waiting. So it's not as chopped up, and it just flowed much better than I expected.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I saved these as well, because, you know, I figured each one or at least a few of them would have very cliffhangery endings. And, you know, I'm an impatient guy. I want that satisfaction of knowing how the story ends right away. So especially with these being the last 5 of the series, it was nice to be able to sit down, start reading issue number 20 and know that, you know, 5 issues later, I'll have reached the end of the story and a satisfying conclusion. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah. So yeah, really it's 5 issues and then an epilogue, because the last issue, number 25, is really, it really is just an epilogue. It plays different from the others. So I'm curious to know what you think of that when we get to it. So I'm curious about what you think about all of these, because when I read them, I'm always thinking, I wonder what Dan thinks about this.
Mm-hmm. You know? I do the same thing when I'm reading anything we cover here. I'm always kind of wondering in the back of my mind, what did Bruce think of that part? I have to make sure to ask him about that or whatever, right?
Yeah. Or did Bruce understand what this part meant? Is Bruce confused? Because there were times where I would read these, the first time I read them, where I got a little confused at parts, you know? And I'll touch on some of that when we get to them. So let's go ahead and into issue 20. So we have Bright Eyes, who's the Tholian they got on board early in the series, and they're here on the ship, and they hear this signal from Vulcan, and it's coming from a tower that's near the capital of Vulcan. And so the Enterprise goes to investigate. Landing party goes down, Kirk, Spock, and team, and then Bright Eyes goes over to the tower. Spock tries to stop them, and Spock is all of a sudden just propelled back to Vulcan's past. So, Dan, I just have to know, what were your thoughts at this point with the tower and him being thrown to the past?
Well, the whole concept of the tower was kind of interesting. I liked that history had changed with the tower being there, but people hadn't realized it had changed because it had always been there, at least as far as their memories are concerned. So I kind of liked that aspect of the kind of time shenanigans stuff there, I guess. And my mind went also to the animated series episode Yesteryear. And I was like, fairly recently in the mission of the Enterprise, Spock has been thrown back into Vulcan's past as well, but with the Guardian of Forever. And of course, the much more recent past in his own lifetime in that case. But in this case, much further back in time, on the order of thousands of years.
Yeah, I remember reading this thinking, wait, where did the tower come from and what's going on with that? And I thought it was pretty cool. I like that, of course, it's Spock that's thrown back. Now I'm thinking about, wouldn't it have been interesting if it was Scotty? That would be really awkward. Scotty's thrown back to Vulcan's past. He's like, what am I doing here? Yeah, so he gets back there and he is attacked by another Vulcan. He gets into a little fight. And then a group of other Vulcans show up, which stop it, and Surak is there. But this is where I got a little confused. I'm just curious. I mean, I know how it works now, but I thought that Surak got Spock to go with them, but really they captured Spock with the others from the Separatist group and took them back. I just remember at the time reading that, it was a little confusing. Was it confusing for you at first?
Yeah, it felt a little disjointed as far as who he was with and where he was going and stuff. And yeah, I guess he's being sent to like a re-education camp or something with these anti-Surak folks, I guess. But yeah, it was a little confusing as well because I wasn't sure who he was with or what was going on or who was attacking them and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a little muddled to me.
Yeah, I thought that Surak was inviting Spock to go with them, but there's one key frame that you see in there where they're putting handcuffs on him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized, looking back on it, I was like, oh, wait, they're taking him back with them, but not just like, hey, come with us, but they're imprisoning him with the other Separatists that they've captured and taking back to the camps with them. But they're not treating him badly. They don't really know who he is because he's wearing a strange uniform, some strange, he's a stranger in this strange land. Mm-hmm. And, but then back to the future, that would be a good title for a movie, by the way, Back to the Future.
Ooh, that's good. We got to write that down.
I know. By the way, I was actually listening to the theme song today. It's such a coincidence. But anyway, what's interesting, though, is that Bright Eyes can see the timeline alterations. They have this ability to see that. So like Guinan, in a way, knows that time has changed, but in the current timeline knows what the old timeline was. And that's the same way with Bright Eyes. I thought that was interesting.
I had that same thought, the comparison of them to Guinan. I thought that was fascinating. And, I wonder, this is totally off on a tangent, but I'm thinking that's maybe what she's going to be doing in season 2 of Picard. But okay, relax. We're talking about year 5 right now. Calm down, Dan. Calm down.
I want to see Bright Eyes in a Guinan hat. That would be awesome.
There you go. Or Bright Eyes Guinan team up,
That's the next comic series.
Perfect. I'm there.
So, okay, now going to the past again, we see Spock there with Surak and learning how that these teachings are happening and the re-education camps. And this is all the things that Surak has been, known to do is, teach about not, suppressing emotions. But things don't really happen the way Spock has learned history of this time period. And Surak is a little weird, I would say, because he's not what you would expect. He actually, as Spock questions Surak's conquest and terrorism and stuff to try to get people to suppress their emotions. And even Spock points out to Surak that that is illogical. That's an emotional response to be doing what he's doing. Okay, I have to ask, what'd you think of the ending of this issue and then Spock using the nerve pinch on Surak?
So this was fascinating to me, and to coin a phrase, fascinating, I guess. But the idea that, of course, as is said here, history is written by the victors. And yeah, I've always kind of wondered in the back of my head, like how somebody could unify an entire planet, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it had me wondering about like, oh, maybe, you know, the history isn't exactly as the Vulcans have learned it over all these years. And it's interesting. I liked that exploration a little bit. And of course, right before Spock knocks out Surak, we get the Stone of Gaul, which that was a beautiful tie into TNG. One of my favorite two-parters in season 7, the Gambit two-parter with it's a psionic resonator. And yeah, I love that whole bit. And yeah, the kind of cliffhanger ending of Spock nerve pinching Surak, that was definitely an interesting move on Spock's part, I guess.
Yeah, and I was concerned because it's like, well, wait a second. Isn't he going against the Prime Directive? He's changing the timeline, right? It's kind of going back to the yesteryear thing, right? It's like, was Spock always there?
Yeah, right?
Had Spock always used a nerve pinch on Surak? You know, did these events happen? Did Jat really commit suicide with the Stone of Gaul at the time? Because the reason they were there because of Spock, you know, like he's already changing the timeline of his own people.
Yeah, totally. And that was going through my head as well. Like, is Spock part of what originally happened? Very similar to the only canon appearance of Gary Seven, I should say, which, you know, we'll talk about Gary Seven later, but Gary Seven's episode, Assignment Earth, they find out by looking at the Enterprise's records that the Enterprise being in the past and delaying Gary Seven and blowing up the weapons platform, that was all part of history. They were part of what was supposed to have happened, whatever that means, right? But so, yeah, that was going through my head too. Is Spock supposed to be here? And is Vulcan society the way it is because of Spock's influence as well as Surak's? So... interesting.
Yeah, and I started to think, does Spock replace Surak in this? You know,
yeah.
Does he become, which again, well, yeah, how does that work? You know, because he learns from the teachings of somebody who really was him, you know, but
yeah.
Anyway.
That harkens back, just a little bit of trivia here. That idea, and it passed through my head too, was one of the original ideas for the episode Yesterday's Enterprise. And it was to involve Sarek, and he was going to end up going back in time and replacing Surak during the time of the Awakening. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And I feel like they adapted that for Cisco and Gabriel Bell as well. Like, I feel like that's where that idea originally came from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make sense. That definitely works. Man. I watched those episodes of Gabriel Bell just recently, rewatched them, I should say. I've seen them all, but yeah, that's a really good one. So let's go to the next issue then, or what would be chapter 2 in the omnibus, but this is issue number 21 that picks up the rest of the story. This is a 2-part story. So, you know, Spock is imploring to the other Vulcans that terrorism shouldn't be used, and that's not how you enforce emotional neutrality. And that, you know, the Stone of Gaul was used as a weapon to bring negative emotions to its user, and Surak was using that. That just doesn't sound like a peaceful person that would utilize a tool that way, you know? And so really in this issue, Spock is educating Surak, right? I mean, again, it's like, so is Vulcan history the way Vulcans are today all because of Spock, because he was always in the past, and Surak is only the way he was because of Spock?
Yeah, I really wonder. And then the other big thing from this issue is the dissidents. Spock convinces them or tells them they should leave Vulcan and strike out for a new world. So this is where my mind really got twisted, because we know, and spoiler alert for Star Trek Discovery, we know that eventually Spock's philosophy does succeed in bringing the Vulcans and Romulans back together. But was he also sort of responsible for them splitting in the first place?
Yeah, according to this, he was, right?
This is incredible. I'm equal parts like, oh, you can't mess up Star Trek history like that. And also, that's actually kind of really cool.
I'd like to think that Spock wasn't involved and these things eventually played out the way they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. But in this situation, in this timeline, Spock is sent back and he kind of gets involved and messes things up a little, but he puts it all on the right track, like maybe the idea of leaving the planet was going to happen soon. He just kind of accelerated it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And like, because Spock knows how it all turns out. So he's like, oh, maybe I've done something to mess this up. I better make sure that things go the way I've learned that they went, kind of thing. So yeah, that's possible.
Well, it's like the city on the edge of forever, right? Edith Keeler died, but she didn't die because Kirk, Spock, and McCoy were there, probably originally in history. But when they were there, they made sure it happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, I don't know. All the timey-wimey stuff, just gets all confusing. And but then I thought it was cool, too, that Spock mind melds with Surak. That's got to be a trip for Surak to see the future and everything, right?
And I was also wondering while I was reading this, does Surak's philosophy kind of change because he sees the society that results from what he's doing? And he's like, oh, that's actually a better idea than what I've been doing. Like, I don't know. Oh, that gives me a headache. Now I know how Janeway feels. So
I know. It's just, there's no way all these stories can really fit into one continuous story. There's no way that Spock has influenced everything in the universe. You say Star Trek is the story of Worf. Well, it makes it sound like it's the story of Spock, really. I mean, it's just crazy. Or maybe Worf exists because of Spock.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Absolutely.
Maybe we all exist because of Spock. Spock is responsible for everything. So, I mean, Spock even helped change a timeline to the Kelvin timeline. So he was involved in that too.
Yeah, that was actually one thought that I had a little bit while reading this as well, is Spock is so central to this story. And if it is indeed what they're trying to get across is that Vulcan is the way it is because Spock influenced Surak to make it that way, like, that's pretty huge for that character. And yet I doubt people reading this will accuse Spock of being a Mary Jane character,
Right.
That thought entered my head and I'm just like, I feel like that accusation would be made of other characters who have been made to be fairly important, but I doubt that would be made of Spock, if that makes sense.
It does. And I mean, of course, this is all fiction, right? So we all know it's not real. But really, the story is about how this affects Spock. It's Spock dealing with his emotional side. Mm-hmm. And to go back to this time where emotions are rampant and that we have somebody who's trying to suppress emotions, it's the conflict that's going on in Spock himself. He's got the Surak side and he's got the separatist side going on of those wanting to keep emotions and deal with their emotions. And then the other trying to suppress and try to reorder things. And Spock starts to realize that he has not been in control. He's, all these other events that have been happening, especially in the last year and things of this 5-year mission, he's having some emotional issues. And this what leads to the events of the motion picture.
And yeah, as we find out right at the very end of this issue, these events have affected Spock quite a bit and caused him to reflect on all of this, as you said. And the very final panel of the issue, where Spock in quiet meditation says to himself, "It appears at long last, I have chosen a side."
Yes. So, okay. So what'd you think of this story between these two issues?
It was fun. It was interesting. It gave me a lot of questions, as I think has been clear from what I've been saying, but it was enjoyable. It was beautiful as well to be able to see kind of the sundering and at that time, thousands of years ago in Vulcan's past. The artwork on these two issues in particular, I think, were some of the best of all the issues in this omnibus. And with some, minor confusion with some of the storytelling, I think it was fairly well told. I enjoyed it. Not my favorite of the year 5 issues, but I enjoyed the story overall.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, it does bother me that Spock may have caused all these things to occur. Like you said, he's the one who separated them and then brings them back together years later between the Vulcans and the Romulans, all that stuff. But yeah, the first time I read it, I enjoyed it, but what I really liked, the idea I liked is that history isn't what was perceived. That history, like you said, history's always like being rewritten, and it's not going to be exact. Like if we were to go back 200, 300, 500 years, whatever it is, we're probably going to see things aren't exactly the way we understood them to be. So that was the part that I really liked. That it's like, oh, Surak isn't this peaceful, loving, emotionless person. I mean, he's just a regular dude with emotions, and he's causing terrorism and havoc to try to get his way. And that was interesting to me.
Yeah. Just hearing you say that just now also made me think of like the theme. We talked a bit about history is written by the victors, but also the idea of kind of the people of history being larger than life and these paragons of virtue and stuff. Something Star Trek has done before in storytelling as well. Like in real life, what was Alexander the Great really like, right? Or anybody from history, King Hammurabi, like who knows, right? And in Star Trek First Contact, we got Zefram Cochrane, right? Where Riker says to him, don't try to be a great man, just be a man and let history make its own judgments. And it was Cochrane himself who said that, but he's a drunk and he's interested in living on a beach with naked women and lots of money. He's not the visionary idealist. And maybe there's a little bit of truth of that with Surak as well.
That is a perfect example. The First Contact film with Zefram Cochrane is a perfect example. I like that. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what's going on here. So, all right. Yeah, that was great. So, yeah, we see how these events that affect Spock, we see how that plays out in the later issues. So they're setting up those chess pieces for how it works at the end of year 5. So let's go to issue number 22. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Thank you so much to our Patreon supporters for helping us to bring you this episode of Positively Trek. We truly could not do it without your support. To join the ranks of our Patreon supporters, such as Carl Morris, Joyce Marin, Jim Stoffel, Dave Garcia, Rick Young, Paul D. Kinnear, and John Blaber, please go to patreon.com/positivelytrek. You can join at any level to receive perks such as early access to episodes and exclusive bonus content. And at higher levels, there are shoutouts and associate producer credits, and much more. Thank you once again for your support of Positively Trek. And now, let's get back to the show.
Okay, so issue number 22. Okay, I just have to mention this. This is like just the geek in me. So Bright Eyes is honored by Kirk to enter into Starfleet Academy as a cadet, and they're given their little badge to wear, their little cadet badge. And I'm like, it's the badge like Tilly wore.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, I could be wrong, but I always thought that the bars behind the symbol in the Discovery cadet badges were to denote years. Like in TNG, the pips that the cadets wore on the collars, there was like first year, second year, third year, fourth year. And I always thought Tilly's had 4 bars behind it because she was a 4th year cadet, because the rank insignia in Discovery is on the badge. So I was like, I think there's only supposed to be 1 there, but that's okay. That's okay.
You know what? I think you're right. You're right for sure. Yeah. But there are 4 bars. There really should just be 1.
I think so. But it's still cool. Like, it's a really cool little Easter egg, though.
You've ruined it for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've ruined everything.
No. So, okay. No, I have to do what I always do. I have to make it make sense. So you're right. That means 4 years. So why would Kirk give Bright Eyes 4 years at the start? Unless he feels that Bright Eyes... I don't know. Oh, no, I have it. Okay, here it is. This isn't a real cadet badge that is Bright Eyes to use. It's Kirk's cadet badge that he has, and he's giving it to Bright Eyes in honor of welcoming them to the academy. But as soon as Bright Eyes goes to the academy, Bright Eyes will get their own badge.
Okay, I like it. There's precedent. Rom had Garrick make Nog a Starfleet cadet uniform, even though he would get his own real uniform when he went to the academy. So yeah, it's just a little.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll buy that.
Okay. But now I just realized I don't think that would work because the little symbol, isn't that for science or the little swirl?
It's for operations. So
operations,
engineering, security, anything that, yeah.
But is that what Kirk studied? Is that?
We have no idea. They've never covered it in Prime Universe canon. So,
or maybe it's Scotty's and Scott. Anyway, okay, I'm getting too far into this. But see, there's reasons. We can make things work. There are
totally
ways to make it work. That's one of my favorite things about Star Trek is trying to make things work. Even though I know it's a mistake or it wasn't a big deal, and they just whatever. I want to make it work. So,
or I could be totally wrong about the bars meaning years too.
I think you're right though. That sounds right to me, but we'll have to look that up just some other time, not now, because, we're covering this comic. So we're going to go right into this. So the Enterprise arrives on Earth and at the end of their 5-year mission, and we have Attorney General Shaw there, and she's running for president. And there's this military meeting going on about the Tholians. And then there's Administrator Renai there, who is also running for president and who is an Andorian that we've met in past issues. So we've met Renai and Shaw in past issues of Year 5. So there's this whole meeting about what to do with the Tholians and everything that's going on. And I have to say, I just really wasn't into this part. Just, it didn't, I don't know, for some reason. You know what I think it is? I think it's Renai that drives me crazy. I don't really care for her character.
No, I get that for sure. I do have to say I kind of enjoyed when Spock kind of starts speaking and very bluntly is talking about Harry Mudd and, when we had to clean up your criminal, he was a criminal, and of course she was working with him before and he's kind of reminding them of all of that. I enjoyed that a little bit just because I really don't like Renai either.
Yeah. So I thought that part was okay. I mean, they're kind of setting things up. They're rehashing things that happened in the past. They're just kind of catching the reader up on some things and then where we are in the state of things and what we're going to do with the Tholians. So this is a necessary thing. I remember reading something about, it was either George Lucas or Steven Spielberg saying there's that scene that you have to put in every movie, like in the Indiana Jones movie, where they have to sit around and talk about something just so they can get the viewer up to speed to what's going to be, how we're setting the story up to play, what's the situation, what is the thing that we're going for. And they're like, that's always the most boring part of the movie for them when they film it, but it's also the most necessary part. That's how I feel about this.
Makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. The exposition given to the reader for sure.
The exposition given to the reader. See, you do it so much better than me just saying these things. I'm fumbling around going, that ping, blah, 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 blah. Okay, anyway. So now we get to this other quick little scene where we have Kirk looking back on his son David. Kirk has this memory of he's climbing up the rocks up to the Marcus laboratory and where he would see his son David when he was a small child. And now Kirk is back there, and right now, years later, David's gone. and he lays down some flowers and a book and a note for David or whatever in memory of him. I mean, why is this facility on top of this rock? What do you call those rock mountain things in the desert?
Yeah, well, this looks like the like really specific one in Arizona, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Why would they put that on top of that?
I don't know. It seems like, I don't know. It seems like defacing some really important natural.
That's what I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah, that kind of bugged me too. That was weird.
Yeah. You don't expect them to do that. So in my head canon, that's a temporary facility that can easily just then take off and move away. It's just sitting on top and it's kind of tapping into the rock. I don't know.
Sure.
But this scene didn't really do anything for me. It just, I mean, I get it, but I don't feel like it really did anything to the story. I don't understand why it was there.
I don't know. I kind of liked it because it tied into Star Trek 2 a little bit, where, you know, he's not going to go visit David because Carol has told him to stay away. So he's left a gift for him, you know, kind of trying to influence him a little bit, I guess, but, you know, not interfering, I don't know. I thought it was touching. I really liked that. And of course, given the whole theme of all of these issues, the fact that it was the Odyssey, and given the title of this particular issue of the comic as well, I thought that worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the overall story of Kirk, that makes a lot of sense. I just didn't see why it was relevant to this story. But the fact that he has been gone from Earth for a long period of time and he's there now, it makes sense that he would do that for sure. So yeah. And then what happens next? I can't remember here. So Spock then declines Kirk's offer to take command of the Enterprise. Surprise, surprise. And that goes on for a while. They have a nice discussion about that. And then Spock gets on the turbolift and Seven appears and takes Spock away.
Yeah,
instantly.
Well, let's talk about this scene a little bit first.
Yeah, I was going to get back to that. I just wanted to put that cap at the end and then say, okay, now, yeah, what do you think, Dan?
I loved this. This was so well written, and like just the two characters reacting exactly the way I think they would react. You know, Kirk would in the moment like try maybe not to take it personally, but fail spectacularly and get irrationally angry at Spock, even though Spock is dispassionately trying to be as logical as he can to explain his choice and that sort of thing. And Kirk kind of taking it personally and getting angry and getting passive aggressive, you know, congratulations on finally making your choice, dismissed, you know, and just that like finality, and he's angry, gripping the back of his chair. And then Spock getting in the turbolift, angry, obviously. And what a great moment for that character. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I do feel like this is one of the best scenes in the whole Year 5 series. Mm-hmm. Because it does seem natural and they pace it out well. It's not rushed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of frames here that there's no dialogue. It's just moments.
Mm-hmm. And it gives it enough space to breathe, I think.
Yes.
It doesn't just like get it over with.
Right. It's not just, you know, Spock, I'd like you to take command of the Enterprise. Thank you, Captain, but I'm not interested. Maybe some other time. And then he leaves, right? It's not like that. Mm. Yeah, there's a whole dialogue between the two, which is appropriate for not just the end of the series, but the end of the entire 5-year mission. So we need this moment. This is the ending moment that you need between these two characters. And because, Spock is going through a lot right now from the emotional standpoint, which is one of the reasons he's not interested in command, because he's got to figure his own thing out. So, yeah, I really like this too. So, and then, like I said, Gary Seven takes Spock away, which was a surprise to me. Mm-hmm. All right. And I was like, oh no, is Gary Seven going to kill Spock? Because Gary's not like in his right mind. But anyway, the towers start to appear on other planets. We see it on Vulcan and Andor and all these other places. And all of a sudden, the towers start creating this almost like galactic-wide entire Tholian web over the entire sector, which, okay, I don't know how you felt about it, but I thought that was cool.
I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know how this device made Spock travel through time, if that's what it's designed to do, is create a Tholian web, but it was cool. It was a really neat idea.
Just picture a Tholian web, and it's going from planet to planet. It's capturing the whole sector, which is pretty cool. And that's how the issue ends. Oh no, what's going to happen? Right? So pretty cool. So that takes us to the next issue number 23. And in here, of course, we see the Tholian web going to different places and our Enterprise crew trying to determine what they need to do about it. And they realize that they need to take Bright Eyes to the Tholian elders because Bright Eyes could show them that the Enterprise crew and Starfleet can be trusted, because Bright Eyes has spent almost a year with them and knows that they could be trusted, that maybe Bright Eyes can show the Tholians that they're being influenced by somebody, some things that are giving them the wrong information and are using them.
Mm-hmm. And I like that as kind of the end result of his time with the Enterprise crew. And, the whole series is called Year 5, but it kind of didn't occur to me that like everything we've read has been 1 year. And like he's been on the ship for almost an entire year, learning from everybody. And now he's going to take that knowledge back to the Tholians and influence them that way and show them who they're dealing with and what it's all about. And I thought that was really interesting. Really cool way to kind of set up this character early in the story and then have it pay off here right towards the end.
I agree. Yes. I really enjoyed the character of Bright Eyes, especially as each issue has gone on. So the one thing though I haven't really enjoyed, and I don't mean that I don't enjoy this part of the story, but this character I'm not enjoying because he's trying to kill our crew. He's trying to kill Kirk, and that's Gary Seven. How dare he do this, But he's got Spock, and he's showing Spock the disastrous future of the galaxy. Now, this part was pretty cool, too, because we get to see all these events that we've seen throughout Star Trek history, all the way from, the movies to the different series and even to the current series.
I loved that. We see it's starting with the destruction of the Klingon moon of Praxis and the militarization of the Cardassians, the Zenkethi, the Borg even, and the Dominion War, the destruction of Romulus, and the synth attack on Mars. It was really cool, showing Spock all this and assuming that he will come to the same logical conclusion that Gary Seven and the Aegis have, which is, they must prevent all of this from happening.
And then the last panel is the burn from Discovery in the future.
1,000-year wick until the galaxy itself burns.
Yeah.
So
I
cool.
love that they brought those in.
Yeah.
But this is the part that really kind of confuses me, is that Gary feels that all these events could be prevented if Kirk is killed because Kirk is the one who's caused these things. Am I understanding that correctly? Because that just seems wacky doodle to me.
Well, their ultimate goal is to get the Tholians to take over the entire galaxy and put it into like a stasis. Like that's the ultimate goal there.
Yeah, because they think the Tholians are more a peace-loving species and they can help, bring order to things. But he also does that because he thinks, well, that would, he needs to prevent Kirk from getting involved. Like Kirk has been a big instrument in causing these things. And it just seems so odd to me that he would want to change history based on killing Kirk. Which we get to, I guess, a little more later in the other issues. I'm kind of jumping ahead, but...
Yeah, well, I think that's more vengeance on Seven's part, because Kirk killed Isis. That's what his main grudge with Kirk is. He just wants vengeance against Kirk. But we also find out, too, that, the whole Tholian stasis plan, that's not the actual end goal either. And Spock kind of learns a little bit more about this plan. Like he says... And I have learned far more of your plan than you believe. And we kind of do find out later that like it's putting the whole galaxy or the whole universe in basically a stasis and then killing it all, including the Tholians.
Yeah, which is kind of strange, you know? It's an interesting concept, right?
Yeah, if everything will be peaceful once everyone is dead. I guess that's true.
Well, yeah, because they'll be quiet, right? They're
It's
all
a very
dead.
twisted logic, yeah.
Yeah. It's like I don't really understand what's going on with Gary Seven, but it seems as if that, the death of Isis and all the control that he's been under, it's almost like it's stressed him, you know? And Kirk later points out to him about focus on the mission, right?
Well, I also think like it's a bit of a story of like the effect that a fascistic society has on someone that they've brainwashed as well. Like they've made him into this thing that believes 100% in this mission and all this stuff. And I feel like it's talking a bit about brainwashing a bit. I could be wrong about that, but that's what it feels like as well.
Yeah, I see that too. I feel like that's in there too. But yeah, he definitely wants to get his vengeance on Kirk, because then they go back 5 years earlier and Gary Seven tries to shoot Kirk at the start of the 5-year mission. And that's where the issue ends. So Kirk dies no, he doesn't die. We're to believe that Gary shoots him, and well, did Kirk die? Well, of course, we don't think he did, but let's see what happens to create another timeline. So then we go to issue number 24 and we see that future Kirk came back to the past with Gary and saved his past self from Gary. And they start jumping through multiple time periods doing this. And it's like this forever fight that goes on through different time periods where Gary just can't kill Kirk because Kirk's always saving himself. What did you think of that?
Really cool. That was fun. Like I found myself reading this wondering, like Gary Seven is wondering, like, how is Kirk doing this? How is he following me and able to travel through time as well? And, we see all kinds of things. We see Tarsus 4, the site of the Kodos massacre and stuff, and the Axanar peace mission, and Kirk as a cadet, like you said, and his childhood in Iowa, and my favorite, the U.S.S. Kelvin, done up in like TOS stylings. I loved that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about that style, because it's like, well, it's not that the Kelvin we see in the movies is from the Kelvin timeline. It's from the Prime timeline, but then it falls into the Kelvin time. Like that's when the timeline splits, right? The ship looked that way we saw in the movie. It wouldn't look differently, but I'm okay with it. It's just, to me, that doesn't make logical sense.
It just went through a refit at some point. This is just before that because he's going to kill Kirk's dad or something. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll go for that. Yeah, this is before the refit. I like that. See, you can make it work.
Well, especially since Captain Rabau says it's an experimental ship design. So I could see them like doing different things to it and refitting it or something at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're right. Experimental design, of course. That's what it is. Yes. And I love that they're fighting on that ship. I've been wanting to go back to the U.S.S. Kelvin ever since that movie came out. And we've never really gotten much of anything from that ship. We haven't got like a spin-off story of that crew or anything. So the fact that Gary Seven and Kirk are fighting on that ship just delights me to no end. So thank you very much. Even though I'd like to see more of the crew, but I just like that they're doing it on this ship.
I do also love, like, when all's said and done, the final revelation of how Kirk is traveling through time, because we find out, like, basically Kirk just talked Seven down and managed to convince him, but that hadn't happened yet. And it happens in this moment that we see. And Seven is going to give him the servo so he can go back and stop him again. That just like, I got there and I was like, okay, that's really cool.
There's that timey-wimey stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Kirk says they were never captains of their own destinies, only pawns on a no-win game, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, they basically learn from each other, but more so Seven learns from Kirk. and eventually backs down. But then McCoy has him later at the end of the issue that's scanning him for genetic adjustments that were made to him, and I thought that was interesting that he's put into temporary stasis.
Yeah, so at the end of the 5-year mission, I guess, Gary Seven is in stasis in Starfleet custody, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right next to Khan from the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, and then, of course, Bright Eyes is instrumental in getting the Tholians to back down and reaching a peace with the Federation and such. So it all comes to a happy ending, and that's where the 5-year mission ends.
Yeah. And this final page, as Kirk and Spock are having this conversation, and they're Kirk was initially very angry with Spock, obviously, but he's calmed down. Spock's still not going to take command of the Enterprise, but Kirk's okay with that. And the kind of slow walk off the bridge during this conversation, the turbolift doors close and the lights go down. If Star Trek, the original series, had an actual end episode, like I could totally see the staging of this, with the lights just dim and go out. And that's the end of the series. Perfect.
Yeah. It almost feels like the last episode of Cheers to me.
Yeah. We're closed.
That would have been funny. Kirk just turns around the camera. We're closed, and goes in the turbo lift. And that's it.
There you go.
But yeah, that's it. But it's not really it, because we have the epilogue. We had a bonus issue of issue number 25, which actually has just a few more pages than the other issues. I did the count back when, but it's not by much. So the previous issues are all $3.99, and I don't know how many pages, like 30 pages roughly or whatever. This one is $1 more for the epilogue, and it's got maybe 3 more pages to it. So it's not like a much bigger issue, but they tout it as like, oh, it's $1 more, it's a bigger issue. But it is the epilogue. Now, I have to tell you something before we jump into this. I did not really care for this issue the first time I read
really?
it. And I think the reason is because there's not a whole lot going on in here, and there's not a whole lot of dialogue. And when you read this, in my opinion, when you read this a month later, after all these issues come out, it's just kind of like, okay, we waited for what? But reading it all together with these, it works because it feels like an epilogue. They leave the bridge, and now we see where everybody is at the end. But it works to me better with the other issues than a standalone that you read a month later.
I do have to say I enjoyed it, and the advertising around this, like you say, it was advertised and pushed as an epilogue. And as I was reading it, I had in my mind, and I'm trying to think of like the movies that do this, but I felt like there's somebody in the audience will know exactly what I'm talking about and what movie this is. And there's more than, maybe did the Breakfast Club do it? I'm not sure. Where like the characters, like they pause on the character and it says on the screen what happened to them years later or something like that. Yeah. It's like, Apollo 13 does kind of a verbal version of it where they're all get off the ship after they've splashed down in the ocean, and Tom Hanks is doing the voiceover, and he says, so-and-so flew on this mission and flew the space shuttle having never gotten the measles, and so Jack Swigert went on to this mission and blah blah blah, and as for me, those days on Apollo 13 were the last days I flew in space, and like all that stuff. Like that's kind of how I pictured this issue. It was just like an extended version of like that, if that makes sense. And I kind of enjoyed it on that level.
Yeah, I can see that. Because in this issue we have Admiral Kirk with Bright Eyes on the Tholian Federation joint colony. So, they're working together. So we see Kirk as an admiral doing one of his admiral duties, and he's there with Bright Eyes. We see Spock resigning, and he takes a time to look back at things in his past. I'm just going through this real quick, but we can go in more detail on things we like. Then we have Chekhov, Sulu, and Susan Ling, who are interrogated by these deprived Russians that are in a poor providence. I kind of want to get back to that in a moment. And then McCoy refusing to return to the Enterprise. And then he's, looks at something and a picture of him and his daughter, and it's her birthday that day, Joanna's birthday. And then we have Nyota Uhura on the Enterprise that's being refit where Scotty is. And there's a little sexual tension going on there. And then it ends with Bright Eyes is now a Tholian shard and signs the Tholian Federation Accord with their signature, and Kirk signs it too. So that's pretty much just what happens in this epilogue. So Dan, I'm curious, what parts were some of your favorites in this?
I think the Spock part really touched me, even though like there's very little dialogue in it. We're just seeing these memories and Spock's experiences as he returns to Vulcan and sees his mother and all of that stuff. Just one moment in the shuttlecraft got to me, which I thought was really interesting, where Spock is remembering some of the things that recently happened. And he kind of does this thing where he grips his pants, like he is clearly dealing with some emotions. He clenches his fists, I guess, on top of his thighs as he's sitting there, and then relaxes them. And I'm just like, what a cool moment, like just seeing this emotion just under the surface that he's trying really hard to control, and just really illustrates why he's going back to Vulcan to undergo Kolinar. He feels it's like that's the only way he's going to get through any of this. And there's a line in a Voyager episode called Muse where there's this alien planet and they put on plays, and the main playwright is getting these stories from B'Elanna, and the actor that has to play Tuvok's role in this story is like, I can't play this. The audience is going to feel like I'm either a really bad actor or this Tuvok is an unfeeling monster. And the writer says, no, they will understand that you have emotions that are stronger than anyone else's, that are just boiling just beneath the surface, but you cannot show them because that is what it means to be Vulcan. And I love that line. Yeah. And that's just so perfectly illustrated here.
Interesting. Okay. I like that. My favorite part of this issue was the Uhura and Scotty scene.
That was good too, yeah.
I thought this was worth the whole issue just because Scotty's all by himself on the refit Enterprise overseeing some things. He's, all alone in this lounge area. And there's Uhura. She shows up and she's all in a nice dress, looking like she's going to go out on the town or something. And they have this nice little meal, this nice little moment together. And we see kind of, what we see in Star Trek V, a little flirtation going on there. And she likes Scotty's mustache and wants to go out to dinner with him sometime. And I was like, this is pretty interesting. I wasn't expecting this. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It was cute. A nice little peck on the cheek, and Scotty's like, oh, like he was pretty clueless up to that point. And then looks out the window at the Enterprise and says, oh, girl, you might have some competition.
There you go. Yes. Took them a long time to get to Star Trek V from this moment. But no, I like that part. The part that I thought, I don't even know what to say about this one. I don't want to say it's my least favorite. I wouldn't say it's my least favorite. It was just the one I was more like, huh? And that was the whole Chekhov storyline. Mm-hmm. Is that where you're nodding your head while I'm were you expecting me to say that?
Oh yeah, totally. I could tell by the way you were talking that there was something weird about that one.
Yeah. Was it weird for you?
A little odd, but more in the vein of like, I really want to learn more about this. Like,
right.
What's this little taste of this? Like, what's going on? I want to know more. It has some interesting things to say, which I think is cool. The line, utopia is only utopia by consent. I was like, oh, okay, there's kind of a theme here, but it's very short, so they don't have a lot of time to build it, I don't think. But like, it feels like there's way more of a story here that I want to learn more about. But, I'm assuming they don't say they're on Earth.
Yes.
So, yeah. And I mean, we have learned in the past that there are groups on Earth that don't really take part in the wider society. Like, I think in Voyager, they talk about the rubber tree people in South America that Chakotay and his father go to visit, and they still live like traditionally in their little area and stuff. So, you know, there's groups on Earth like that, but this still seemed kind of weirdly out of place.
It did, because as you're going through the issue, we're seeing, oh, okay, there's Kirk as an admiral doing admiral duties. There's Spock getting ready to leave to go to Vulcan, saying goodbye to Starfleet. You know, the things you kind of expect, you know, to see like where the characters are going. And of course, you know, later we see Scotty on the refit of the Enterprise, that kind of stuff. But we get to this and you see Sulu and Chekhov tied up like they're captured. And I'm like, wait, what is going on here? I thought they would be like at the academy or something. Like what, you know, and there's guys holding like, it looks like maybe like rifles or something. Or
yeah, they call them out as shotguns in dialogue. Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is happening here? And I'm like, and who's that woman with them, you know? And I was like, and of course it's Susan Ling, who, Sulu, like, isn't that the mother of Demora?
I think so. Yeah, that's what they're implying here. I did like that, you know, but weird. And also a mention of Admiral Shran, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. But I'm reading this and it was one of these things I had to read twice. Like as soon as I read, I'm like, what did I just read here? They're speaking Russian to Chekhov. They finally like untie them and they're talking about the poverty in their area and that tourists show up and sure they spend money and take things with them and whatever, but you know, they're poor. And Chekhov's like, but civilization is being rolled out in the provinces right now. Just give it a few months. And I started thinking, well, wait, so there's areas of Earth that aren't in this utopia that are poor and have poverty and all these things. And the hope is coming. I just thought that was really confusing, not expected, yet interesting. I'm like you. I want to know more about this.
Yeah. And yeah, it seems out of place, but like, I don't know. Yeah. Like you, I just want to learn more. Like I want that to be an issue of this, you know, maybe not this, but I don't know. I need more of this story to kind of make sense of it.
Yeah. The way the rest of this issue plays out doesn't lead itself really to like, oh, what happens next? But this does, right? Mm-hmm. It does feel like they're setting something up to say, hey, we're going to have this Chekhov Sulu mini series coming out soon. So we're setting that up. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
But if it's not, I want it.
I can't imagine they are, but I would totally read it. I'd be really interested. I don't know how popular that would be, but I'd like to know.
I would love to know. That really sparked an interest in me. So maybe one day, maybe then they do Star Trek Year 6, which is just all them hanging out on Earth. Actually, maybe that is possible. They may be playing a series of what happens between the motion picture and this. So who knows? Mm-hmm. So, all right. Any final thoughts? Well, of course you have final thoughts, but what are they?
Well, overall, like speaking for the entire series, you know, all 25 issues, I've really enjoyed this. I think they obviously put a lot of work into coming up with some really interesting storylines. And, you know, early on when they were talking about making this series, they talked about having a writer's room and breaking it like they would a season of television. And I think that shows. I think, you know, the work that they put in really comes across on the page. And, you know, maybe there's some choices here and there that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but overall, I really enjoyed this series. And these final 5 issues, as we got closer to them, that was the question, right? Is this going to wrap up in a satisfying way? They've got a lot of threads going on, a lot of strange storylines. Is it going to wrap up? And are we going to be satisfied with how they wrap it up? And for the most part, I am. I really liked how everything got wrapped up. And the epilogue, as a just kind of little bonus end cap, I enjoyed it as well. So yeah, definitely if people listening haven't read these issues, I hope, maybe you'll pick up the omnibuses if you haven't already and give them a try, because I think that the hard work of these writers and the artists needs to be rewarded, because they did an excellent job, in my opinion.
Yeah, this omnibus is, I don't know if we said this at the beginning, but it's called Experienced in Loss, and maybe we did, but just a reminder, it's called Experienced in Loss. But I agree. I think this was a wonderful series. I can't remember how long it's been going on, because we've been covering it for the last 3 years, I think, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we started talking about it back when we were on Literary Treks, and yeah. And we're coming up on our second anniversary of Positively Trek here pretty soon.
So it's been a while, and it's been good. I can't say anything bad about it. The only things that I've had issues with is what I always have issues sometimes with comics is sometimes I don't think things sometimes are very clear, as you saw in this, where I was like, wait, what is going on? Because comics kind of move a little faster, and sometimes you really have to look at the art to really understand you can miss something if you don't look at the art. Sometimes I get in the habit of just reading the dialogue, and I'm not really spending much time looking. Right?
I do the same, and yeah, it's a bad habit with regards to comics, because the artwork is incredible too.
Yes.
It definitely shouldn't be missed, but I do that as well.
Yeah, wonderful artwork, great stories. I've never read the Year 4 series, so I can't compare it to that.
Yeah, me neither.
I have them, just haven't read them, but now I want to. If it's as good as this, then yeah, I'd want to read the Year 4 comics. But yeah, this was really good. If you wish there was a season 5 of TOS, well, this could have been it in a sense. I mean, it's got a bigger budget. So, for some of the things that are happening, but yeah, I would definitely recommend it. So I would give this 4.5 out of 5 Tholians who are captured onto the Enterprise and eventually become friends.
Nice. That's really good. I guess I didn't give a rating. I'm going to, in grand Star Trek tradition, give it a 4.7 out of 5. There's a 47 in there. A 4.7 emotional Spock fist clenches out of 5.
Wow, that's an interesting one. The fist clenches. Dun, dun. 4.7. I like that, Dan. I wish I would have come up with that. Darn, that's a good one. So, well, when people want to clench their fists at you, Dan, where can they find you?
Well, I hope there's not a lot of fist clenching going on, but if you feel you must, please reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Kurtrats. That's KERTRATS. I'm also on youtube.com/Kurtrats Productions, and of course in the Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook. And Bruce, when you're not fostering a young Tholian in the ways of the Federation, where can we find you?
I can be found on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. That's Admiral with the underline Rex. And you can find me on Facebook and in our discussion group on Facebook. Just look for Positively Trek Discussion Group and we'll let you in. It's a great group and we're both in there with everybody else. That's great. And we're all positive about Star Trek. And we also have a Goodreads group. You can find me there. We have our book club in the Goodreads group that shows all the books coming up for those episodes. So check that out. And also you can do discussions of the books in that group. And then also you can send us an email to positivelytrek@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at positivelytrek, also on Instagram at positivelytrek. And that should be about it. So, and then we also have Patreon. So go there if you want to be a patron. You can do $1 or whatever amount you want to do. And there's some little extra content in there that we throw in every once in a blue moon. So check that out. And we appreciate all the support that all of you give us. So with that being said, we're at the end of this 5-year mission. And this is the end of year 5. And we just want to say thank you for joining us and stay positive.